Our next segment of speakers will take part in a panel discussion and will be unpacking how to bridge the gap, current syllabus versus future technology requirements. In fact, I saw some of our delegates already making reference to the current syllabus and how it requires them to keep up with the requirements of ATP, and that in and of itself not really being a conducive environment for some of the ideas we've heard here today. As part of the discussion, I'll also be incorporating your questions, so please continue to interact. Also, post your comments in that comment box. I'm keeping a close eye on everything. So please make sure that you continue with that engagement. Before I introduce our next speakers, go onto that chat, go into the Q&A and start posting those questions. Well, let me welcome onto the panel today, Tristan White, Senior Product Manager at Christiani Africa. Tristan, good morning. David Sitlage, Didactic Area Manager, South Africa at Festo. David, good morning.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning.
And Heather McDade, Managing Director at Modena Durban. Heather, good morning.
Good morning, Kathy.
And certainly, last but not least, we've invited back, because he did so well in the first time round, Dr. Simelane, Chief Director of Curriculum Implementation and Monitoring at the Department of Basic Education. Dr. Simelane, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me again, Katie.
Yeah, I think, the topic that we're talking about today is such an important one, bridging the gap, and we can just get straight into the conversation. Rapelang in her presentation spoke about how important it is to use new technology in bridging this gap. Perhaps let me get your first opening statements. What is this gap? How wide is it? And how can it be bridged? Tristan?
Thank you very much. So I work for a company called Christiani Africa, and we focus mainly on gamified learning tools and virtual reality, as well as the content specifically. And when we talk about the gap, I think we've noticed that a lot of these tools can help assist students that are coming out of educational institutions to specifically apply the correct knowledge coming from the industry side. So what we do is we try and align this content with the industry so that they have the correct skills to become more employable going forward. Yeah.
All right. Let me get your views on the question of bridging the gap.
Thank you, Katie. Bridging the gap always means we need to look at where the growing industrial sectors are, and we need to look at the technologies that are required to actually close those particular gaps. Now, the same thing, syllabus that we actually teach, or the curricula that we teach, we have students moving out of schools, moving out of universities, who need to gain employment. They need to be employable, which means we have to identify employable skills so that they can actually enter the job market for that. So technology gives us a kind of an advantage, because that's something that can be easily implemented, particularly when you look at digital tools that are available now, whether it's VR, augmented reality, gamification. Tristan has alluded to that. We're able to look at that. Festo being one of the, or if I were to say, Festo is a global leader when it comes to technical education. We're in the space where we're able to look at this type of gaps and provide solutions for it. And being also an industrial company, we know what the industry needs, what kind of technology that industry use. It allows us to be in a perfect space to be able to close those gaps. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Heather?
So I'm with Modena Design Centers, and we are the Autodesk Platinum Partner. Autodesk is the largest CAD software development company in the world. So I sit in a little bit of a different space in that we kind of are in between industry and education. And we've done a lot of education work in high schools, teaching students and educators. And I just really feel like the gap lies in the fact that there's no real focus in the curriculum to develop that technology. And I think that's where How we change that, I don't really know yet, but I really believe that's where the gap is at the moment. We need to. I think we're shortchanging our children.
Yeah.
We're not equipping them to face the real world.
Okay. Dr. Similani, you see Heather sort of gently looking at you, hint, hint. But before you get into perhaps a response to what Heather has raised, your own take on this question of bridging the gap.
Well, thank you very much, Katie. In terms of bridging the gap, I think our approach is at 2 levels. Firstly, it's with regard to the mismatch in terms of the skills that we give our young people through the curriculum. There is a skills gap in terms of our curriculum offerings, because over time our curriculum offerings have been mainly academic. And we have not been offering vocational and occupational skills, as it were, skills and competencies. So that's the first gap. And that's the gap that we are plugging through introducing the 3-stream model as part. At the second level, the gap is with regard to the fast-changing world and the rate at which we are trying to keep pace from an educational perspective, in terms of even getting our young people or introducing our young people to the 4th industrial revolution. I know that other countries could be talking about the 5th or the 6th, I don't know, but we still are grappling with trying to catch up and prepare our young people for the 4th industrial revolution. Not only our young people, but also our teachers as well, so that they are able to utilize the changing technology in delivering the curriculum. So these are the 2 critical gaps. It's in terms of the skills gap or the mismatch between learners, between the curriculum that we have been giving our learners as compared to what industry wants, and of course the fast-changing world, even in terms of technology.
Tristan, I'm going to bring you in on that, because you talked about how your company in the gaming world works specifically with introducing, those that are coming into the workforce to industry and what it is that industry needs. When you look at where the biggest challenges lie in this mismatch that Dr. Similani is talking about, what would you say based on the experience that you've had?
Look, okay, so our team that we currently work with, we've all been on the ground. So we come from a technical background, electricians, plumbers, tradespeople. And when we see people coming out of TVET specifically, because we have a very big focus on vocational education, is that when they come on site, for example, there's a lot of soft skills as well that are lacking. Yeah. Critical thinking being one of them. And we are looking at the way that we can use these tools to specifically teach critical thinking. So for an example, let's say you have in a TVET space, you have to do an assessment where you install a DB board and a switch. But when it coming on site, the DB board looks different or the switch is on a different place, then students completely don't know what to do.
They freeze.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So we encourage exploration and self-learning in that virtual space so that students can go explore, use the theoretical knowledge that they've gained and apply it in a space where they are free to experiment and see what happens when they do different types of installations.
And are you finding that is a result of not having enough opportunity to do that as part of the schooling program that is being provided?
Look, I can't comment fully on that, but saying that what we've seen being applied at TVET, it's very one-dimensional, and that's why we're looking at focusing on those specific skills.
Yeah. I imagine that part of what it does, Heather, because you touched on this issue earlier, is that it then means that a lot of time has to be spent skilling somebody that could already be operating in the workforce. So instead of sort of hitting the ground running, you're having to spend extra time. I don't know how much time actually making sure that this person has the capabilities and the capacity they need to do the job when you send them out there to do it.
It's a big challenge. It really is a big challenge. And I just feel like we have to spend the time upskilling people. That's the only way we're going to do it, and hands-on and using the technology that we've got. We have to upskill people at the right level so that they can go forward.
Dr. Similani, when you think about practically what you as the department have to work with, the conversations that you're having with the TVET colleges, and what's practically possible, right? Because everybody in this panel can talk about what they think should happen, but you're also living within the limitations of declining yearly budgets, ministers that are constantly fighting for more resource allocation. So practically, when you hear this feedback then, what does it say to you about where this mismatch is happening and what you could perhaps be doing also to help respond to the problem?
I think basically in conceptualizing the program that we call the three-stream model, I think we had to invite a lot of expertise, whether you talk Quality Council for Trades and Occupation, Umalusi, you talk about SAQA, you talk about Department of Higher Education and Training through the TVET college sector. So we've been drawing experiences from there in terms of designing the curriculum so that it's a curriculum that is quite fitting into what industry wants. But more than that, we also had to look at what is offered by the TVET colleges so that we can look at how we could share even resources with the TVET college sector, basically probably even at a local level between schools and TVET colleges around there, and even industry in those areas. That is why we advise our schools to take subjects that are aligned to the local economies, so that as we prepare our learners for employability, those can even articulate into that world of work. So it's that synergy across the education and training system, which is very wide. And of course, there is a proposal on the table which came into effect from February 2016 between the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Higher Education. And the proposal is that we both have to look at streamlining the offering of the qualifications from NQF level 2 to 4, so that we can share the resources. And ultimately, the vision from higher education is that maybe in the future, TVET colleges may start offering qualifications at NQF level 5 and 6, so that that leaves space for basic education to offer qualifications at NQF level 2 to 4, for purposes of efficiency within the education system itself, and also to allow our learners who complete grade 9 to even go to TVET colleges, instead of them waiting to complete matric first and then go to TVET colleges, which is another inefficiency within the education system, because they go back and start from an equivalence of grade 10, which they would have passed some 3 to 4 years ago.
I suppose that also requires a perception shift in our society, right? Because when you have teenagers, young people that are leaving school in grade 9, often parents see it as a bad idea, and the system, how we've been socialized, is that you're a dropout if you leave at this grade, and the education around that, I think, could be quite significant in making sure that people know this is a credible and viable option that can be pursued. I did say I'm keeping a close eye on that Q&A chat box that we have, the Q&A tab firstly, and the chat tab that we've opened as part of the conversation we're having here. And I do want you to keep engaging. One of the things that is being said here, Zandile Magujwa says, there has to be a deliberate effort between government, educational role players and business in responding to content review to align with the skills of the future. And David, this question is specifically for you from Cynthia, who wants to know, how is Festo, how do you work with public schools to help bridge the gap between industry, schools, and the education system?
Okay, thank you, Kathy. If you don't mind, can I comment on,
Sure, please, feel free.
on some of the
Feel free.
information that has been said already? I think another challenge that we have is that when it comes to the gap, you look at the industrial profile, you'll find that when you look at technical education or technical professions, you'll find that the higher you go, the triangle narrows. And it's got its fundamentals in terms of a strong artisanal or skills space. In South Africa, you have a whole lot of students going to varsity. In fact, you have about 1.2 million students at university and about 600 at TVETs. That creates a kind of a mismatch in terms of what industry needs or the kind of skills that we need to actually put out there. So we need to change that mindset. We need to make sure that we make these particular professions, particularly vocational as well as technical, going to TVETs, much more attractive. That's when technology plays a fundamental role on how we do that. Our kids, I know with my child for now, you give them a laptop or a tablet, they get so excited. So we need to make sure that we exploit the power of technology in that space. Now, coming back to the world that is changing very fast, for us to wait for the kids to gain employment and we only develop them then, we are actually going to be losing because by the time they get to that space, technology would have also has changed. So we need to actually have a dynamic kind of a system that's working where we introduce technologies at lower levels, particularly with the fourth industrial revolution, that industries are introducing smart factories. And with smart factories, there are digital tools that are being used. Schools need to be able to have a matriculant who matriculates without being able to use a laptop. Already is at -10. So we need to introduce those kind of exposure and opportunities for kids. Now, what is Festo doing in terms of schools preparing the young kids? We have different levels. Firstly, in the school level, we are looking at what we call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, where we produce solutions such as Bionic for Education, which are products that are linked, that are multi-faceted in terms of the skill area. You have a curricula that will actually touch on both biology, on robotics, on digital media, where students actually build a robot. But in building a robot, it's not just a typical robot. The robot will actually be, for example, a fish. You have to learn more about the fish, which means you start talking biology. And also you have to actually start talking about maths, because you start having to calculate the angles, learn about the coordinate system, and also because you are using a tablet to work with, start learning how to work with digital media. And we put the students in a team where they start, you mentioned about the soft skills. We have T-shaped skills profile nowadays, where the soft skills becomes very important. So we now actually force students to work as a team and to project manage and be able to collaborate. So Festo has got a full program that is actually used in Bionics for Education, which also there is a website which students as well as teachers can actually visit, which is called Bionic for Education, to be able to look at that. And we also work within the TVET space to make sure that the transition between school and TVET, I like what Dr. Simelane is saying. We don't have to wait for students to finish matric before they actually choose a career. In fact, you can choose a career much earlier. I mean, at grade 9, you can start going into the TVET space. Why do we have to finish grade 12 and only to start back to NCV level 2, which is grade 9? We need to start actually having to determine which direction where the kids needs to go much earlier for that matter.
I think there's a very relevant question here, and it's around universities. Christian Kutu is asking, why are universities not giving skills to technical teachers that they produce? And teachers come blank from universities with no practical skills. There's been a lot of talk about the people that are in the educational system. And now this really turns the focus to the educators themselves. Tristan, do you want to have a go? Tristan, rather, do you want to have a go at that?
Look, I can comment on the capacitation of lecturers a little bit, because we are running programs specifically with Sasol, actually, but this is now at a TVET, from a TVET side. But the comment would just be that the capacitation of lecturers is extremely important, because we had a discussion outside before we started this topic on how it does not help that you bring these technologies into the space and the capacity to implement them is not there. Yeah. Look, there's a lot of digital tools and a lot of inventions and a lot of things that are currently happening, which are incredible for the space, but they are worthless if they're unable to be implemented on the ground. So yeah, that is my comment on that.
Heather?
I had a conversation recently with a number of EGD teachers across the provinces, and it's capacity at the moment. They just feel like there's not enough time. CAD is not part of the curriculum. It's a very small part of the curriculum, and they just don't have the time with the kids or to upskill themselves to actually get to the level and get the kids to the level where they actually can be valuable. So I think it's a time thing. And one of the suggestions was, and I mean, I know I might be was that maybe we make it a separate subject. So it's maybe an elective subject, just to make it a little bit more manageable and attainable from a capacity point of view.
But added to that, we were saying that then people should be educated on what that actually means, specifically 3D tools, specifically the digital tools that are being used in industry. The more people understand what these tools actually are, the more they will be willing to adopt them and actually learn about them. And
it can sound quite intimidating when you say tools, because automatically I'm thinking of a toolbox and, oh no, that's not the kind of thing that I should be into. And Lishal Barnard has a question sort of building just on that very idea. And she's asking, how can we tackle the current stigma regarding technical subjects and learners? And that's where that mindset shift that we touched on earlier needs to come in, because there is a stigma that is attached to it. And you talk about tools and the fact that automatically, you think about artisanal workers and it feels like, oh, this is a very labor-intensive job. No, I want to sit in an office all day. But that's not all that it comes with.
Yeah. Look, I think that, we think that the youth is the right way to tackle it. So especially touching on what was said is that through these digital tools, if we look at the youth today, putting them into virtual space, using virtual technologies. We work with a company called Algo at Works, where they develop youth specifically in robotics. And having a more playful outlook, people realize that it's, number one, not as intimidating, and that stigma is wrong. There are so many very cool traits that can be done that are, if it's seen in the right light, then people immediately are like, oh, I want to be an electrician because look how the amazing things that are actually
So
done.
maybe we need to add cool tools.
Cool tools. I think we changed the term to cool tools.
Let me add to that, Kathy. The misconception that doing artisanal work, it's actually a lower form of work that a student can actually aspire to. It's actually misleading. I mean, I can tell you one thing for sure. A plumber can make much more than an engineer. I mean, look at
In fact, there was an article recently that spoke to the fact that artisanal workers in a country like South Africa are also more likely to make more money than doctors.
100%. And these are what we call employable skills, because these are the type of work whereby whether there's a company out there or there's no company out there, you can go out and start your own business. If you spend 4 years at university and gaining so much technical higher level skills, you will find that to actually get going and find a space to operate, you need to have a reputation behind you. But if you're an electrician, you can do domestic wiring. If you're a plumber, you can sell yourself plumbing for that. And obviously, the digital tools allow us to entice the students or the youth so that they can actually look towards these particular careers. But there's actually much more benefit in actually pursuing these careers, particularly in our own context in South Africa. 54% of the youth is unemployed.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at only that, what you call statistic, it's quite crazy for us to start thinking we'll all we'll go to university and then we hope to have some form of a job. The biggest thing which I find when I actually speak to people is that we have this mentality that if I don't have a pay slip, then I'm actually not employed. And it's not about the pay slip. It's about the skills and how you actually apply those skills for that. So the youth should start thinking along those kind of vision and actually become entrepreneurial, and then we can grow small business and we can grow our economy as well.
And I think this is probably also where, Dr. Simbelane, we're going to shine the spotlight a little bit again as the department, because the state of TVET colleges themselves don't help to inspire confidence in this being chosen as a stream. And it also adds, I think, to the stigma that people have.
Well, the issue of the mindset is actually very unfortunate, but one should also, make mention of the fact that this is not only the mindset that is prevailing in the South African society, it's actually across the globe, where the academia or the academic learning pathway is actually seen as the superior one compared to vocational, and in our case, as well as occupational. And that is why, as a department, we've actually started an advocacy and communication strategy. We've developed a program, and we started with the program. And we are targeting all sectors of our society to take them through what we are introducing, particularly the two, the vocational stream and the occupational stream. And if you look at the occupational stream, you also need to appreciate the fact that in terms of the vision that we have for it, is that when learners complete grade 12, they should have had a certain amount of exposure even to what industry wants, what the work environment looks like, and what kind of aptitudes and attributes do you need to bring into the work environment so that you are employable. Because employment and employability, I think there's a slight difference. People have got to be made employable, have got to be prepared to be employable. But what David has actually talked to, especially in terms of artisans, whether it's technicians, artisans, and the money that they make compared to people who have gone the academic route, there is actually no comparison. It's just that people are not aware. I mean, I went through the academic learning pathway, obviously, but whenever I call a plumber to come to my house, first thing is the call-out fee.
Yes.
About 350 rand before they even look at the problem, at what problem. Now added to solving your problem, it goes even further. But I'm not paid. I'm a teacher by profession. I've never been paid by just arriving at the school before I even teach, So it's that mentality which needs to change. And I believe that if we work with all our stakeholders, even from the organizations and entities represented here, I think we need them the most, because this program that we are introducing as basic education is much bigger than ourselves as basic education. We are not going to succeed unless we have partnerships with all the critical stakeholders.
That issue of employment and employability, Lichelle Barnard actually was making reference to it. And she says, how are we ensuring that the current syllabus will lead to employability? Are tech colleges accepting learners with these subjects? Can they already enter the workforce with their skills? I think part of that question, Lichelle, have been answered already, but perhaps just to build more on this employability a question, an issue that Dr. Similani touched on. Heather?
I think from our perspective, obviously we sit in the middle of software and industry, and we are hearing often from industry that people are coming out of their formal education and they do not have the technical skills that industry requires. And I think that's where the gap is. There is this gap between finishing school and being employable, and that's, industry is saying they're not coming out with what we want as industry. And I think that's the gap we have to start addressing.
David?
Yeah. I think for us as a company, as Festo, to tell you the truth, yes, qualifications are important, but what you can do with that qualification is even more important. If a student leaves an institution and they present a paper, and I take him into our operations and they actually become productive, it's value for me. As compared to if I take them there, I have to put them back into a training room, train them, and take them into the what you call operations area. I have to invest in order to get something out of it, which means I'm working at what you call a minus. So definitely, when you actually look at schools, you have to look at it in two ways. You have basic education, you've got the TVETs. Now, we have to be able to sense. You won't leave a grade 9 and thinking that with grade 9 you're going to be employed out there. We are preparing you to access different types of employment possibilities. And that's what Dr. Simelane is referring to. We are making sure that the learners at school levels actually have an idea of what these occupations are, by actually giving them those skills. Obviously, at some level, some of them will actually excel. Some of them will be able to do a much better job at it. But some will then decide, oh, maybe the academic route is the way to go. But a vast majority of them, I can tell you, in theory, if they actually choose the vocational education, they are more likely going to get employed. And that's where we need to be doing our career education and making sure that the different occupations that exist there are actually known to the students. They are able to be exposed to them. The technologies that go along with it, they are able to be exposed. I mean, we recently, about 2 or 3 years back, we've actually had a smart factory being opened. What happened is you have a technician not carrying a screwdriver, not carrying a toolbox, but just carrying a tablet. You run diagnostics using a tablet, and then you are actually able to fix. That's how now technology is actually driving these occupations for that. So it is advisable, at least from our perspective, that the students should actually start looking and actually exploring what kind of career options that they have, probably at grade 7 or 8, much earlier than at matric level for that.
Are you paying virtual rent for this property of yours?
For sure.
I just, to be a little bit out there, are we doing that? And so I just feel like we can sit and we can chat about this, but what are we really doing? And I look at it's a little bit of an imbalance, because some people are getting the benefit of what is happening out there, but some people aren't.
Yeah.
And that's where my heart lies, is we've got to do this for everybody. It can't just be for a selective group. It's got to be across the board to really, really see the full benefit of it on a national level.
Yeah.
So there are these pockets of expertise that are feeding into our colleges and our education, but what about the rest?
Yeah.
You know, that is my heart and my question. What are we really doing?
The foundation of it, Heather, is an acknowledgement of the country that we live in and the deep inequality that this country faces. And it's easy to sort of, let me not say it's easy to forget, but it's easy to get carried away with things where they are working, but forgetting that where it's not working for the majority of people. Where it is working, it's working for the minority of those that make up the numbers of this country. And perhaps what you're saying is related to a question from Melenyati, who's asking, when will DBE review CAP's FET technical phase to address the outdated content to current technologies in the industry? Because that's also one way of bringing that inclusivity. If it's already there in the content, and the content is what everybody has access to.
Well, we've started with the review of our curriculum. We actually started last year, and our plan is that by end of 2024, we should have completed the review of the curriculum. As part of, this is the process that we refer to as strengthening the curriculum in basic education. And as part of that, we are infusing the 21st century skills into our curriculum. Because as much as, if you look at our curriculum, some of those skills and competencies are actually listed in the overview chapter of each curriculum or each subject, but they do not find expression in the actual content. So as part of strengthening our curriculum, we are taking these so that they are taught in every subject by design, not by default or by those vigilant teachers who are aware of the changes that are happening around us. That is one. But two, we are also introducing, with the 3-stream model, we are introducing the General Education Certificate. It's a qualification at the end of the grade 9 year. Now, what is going to be more interesting over and above just assessing for skills and competencies, we are also going to be looking into assessing for the first time with this qualification, our learners, assessing them for inclination. That is, where do their interests lie? So that we can align their inclination with career guidance, which we are already working with Department of Higher Education under the program of Career Development Services. We already have that partnership to strengthen our career guidance, and our aim is to start and to align with the vision set out for basic education in the National Development Plan, where we are implored as a department to introduce career guidance as early as grade 8, not even grade 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An important question here from Trevor Adams. Trevor, I hope you're looking forward to that prize you got a little bit earlier on. I see you're still building the points there on the leaderboard. I just had to throw that in there. But he's asking, we constantly say that we're preparing learners for jobs that don't even exist yet. But how can we do that if such a lot of learners cannot even read and write properly? How do we bridge that gap? And that is a very, very basic gap. I don't know who wants to go first on that question for Trevor. All right.
I could give it an attempt. I must indicate that with all the programs that we're introducing, let me talk about the 3-stream model. The 3-stream model is actually built for it to succeed. We are firming up the foundational learning skills, and that is where you find reading, literacy, and numeracy. Building it right from the foundation phase, and especially now that we have taken over the early childhood development as basic education, that is giving us an opportunity to build literacy and reading skills right from birth through to formal schooling and all of that. So the whole foundation is based on foundational learning skills, reading, writing, and numeracy.
And I think it's great to hear about the fact that the department is aware of, the gaps and the inefficiencies in the system. The world we live in, however, is not waiting for South Africa to get its act together. So this technology that is being spoken about, people are not sitting there thinking, no, guys, let's not develop any further. Let's wait till South Africa is able to also contribute to what we're doing, and then only will we go ahead. And that's part of the real challenge for the future. When we talk about, having a skill force that is future fit, that at the time that we are finally satisfied that we're doing everything we can, where will the rest of the world be? Tristan?
Look, I would like to say that yes, we shouldn't stand still and we should move forward, but also there are some incredible technologies coming out of this country, which people in the rest of the parts of the world look at and think, wow, look at what
at
you
South
guys are
Africa.
actually busy achieving. So I think it's all about, yes, the adoption and moving forward with these technologies because they are there. And implementing them might be the key to keep moving forward, actually. Yeah.
David?
I think South Africa is in a unique position. On one hand, you've got third world. On the other hand, you've got first world. You do have pockets of excellence, and you do have pockets where work still needs to be done. So we need to cater for both, because delaying progress, it actually means we're gonna end up being way behind. So for me, is that while DBE is actually working on structuring themselves to make sure that the education systems, at least the fundamentals, the skills that are fundamentals like your numeracy, reading, are actually addressed. We still have to address what you call the different levels and make sure that these people can actually compete at higher levels as well. First, though, luckily we are a global company. So what we do is our intervention is to make sure that we create those networks with our international partners. What we also do is we work with Department of Higher Education and Training to make sure that the skills across different disciplines through what we call the world skills, which is more like an Olympics of skills, where we can actually assess where particular skills are, which are strong, and then we can learn from them, and then we can come and actually update ourselves and make sure that our programs runs quite in line with international standards for that. So basically, we cannot actually be in a way of progress. We have to make sure that those programs actually are supported and carry forward. And I must mention this, maybe Dr. Simelan, you might actually comment on it, because this is also a limiting factor, because Kathy, you mentioned about the limited budget. For example, when you look at the TVETs, we have about 50 TVETs colleges in South Africa with multiple campuses, and we have 26 universities in South Africa, but the universities, they get the bulk of the budget. Yeah. Why is that a mismatch? Why are we not maybe having a political will of a kind of a mindset to say we need to make sure that we build capacity within these particular streams so that we can have the skills that we want and we can get those jobs that these people are actually looking for. I mean, what I like about the artisanal skills or jobs is that you don't have to wait for a job to create your own job. I mean, currently we suffer in terms of water treatment, in terms of energy. I mean, now we're looking for more solar installers. We need to educate and make them competent. I mean, and, if we can train these people and then they can go out there and be able to apply themselves. We need to create that mindset in terms of making sure that the resources are provided where they are most needed for that.
Dr. Simelane?
No, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Brother David, for that input. Let me also mention that in terms of aligning ourselves as basic education with developments in technology, we have already written a curriculum for coding and robotics. And interestingly, South Africa starts introducing coding and robotics from grade R, as opposed to from grade 4. Which is what you find in other countries. That's one. But two, in terms of awareness of the technology, even with our 3-stream model, that is why we provide 2 types of training. We provide our teachers and subject advisors with the theoretical training, which is built into the subjects, but more importantly, we also introduce them, we also train them in the practical aspects of each of the subjects, and we take them to skills training centers where they get to even be exposed to new technologies that they have to utilize in delivering the curriculum. For instance, I think Tristan did talk about emerging technologies where he was actually making reference to a tools box. That don't imagine the tools box of old. There are emerging tools boxes which are aligned to technologies, to emerging technologies as well. But finally, when we talk employability, I like the point that David has been making repeatedly about not looking for employment, not preparing young people to be employed, but also we've just introduced entrepreneurship in education, so that our young people are also given entrepreneurial skills and that they can even start their own small businesses, so that they could also contribute to governments and corporates' efforts of creating jobs, because they can create their own jobs and also employ other young people.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting ready to sort of wrap up this discussion, but I want to do that taking into account Simone Duploy, who's posted this question and has also got some support for it. And Simone is asking, why doesn't the department involve private skills-based companies to involve young people? We see many academic universities and colleges visit schools, but no actual companies who employ people with skills to motivate skills development. And I think that's a question everybody on this panel can answer. So Tristan, I'll kick it off with you. You can answer that question, please, and weave into there your closing remarks, and then we'll go down the line.
Right. So I think as our company, as a middleman almost between the private and the public sector, we are trying to identify specific points where these two should come together. And we run programs, for example, where we educate lecturers as well as students on specific needs that they need. And it's a good conversation to have with the private sector and say, listen, for there to be more employability or there should be more transparency, especially in the industry and what the industry needs. But I fully agree that companies should do the same kind of strategy, because they usually approach us and say, listen, we need X amount of qualified electricians. Yeah. And then we say, well, then you put in your effort and go to the schools and go to these universities, see what's out there and see what they need to become those qualified electricians for you. Yeah. So that link, I think, is extremely important, and it's a good topic to touch on. Yeah.
All right, David?
Yeah. I think, at least from our side, Festo is a fortunate company that we do get schools approaching us, asking us to come and actually work with them, either in training the teachers or working with the students and introducing them to different technologies, or even looking at job shadowing, where I would assign some of my engineers to actually work with a student for 2 or 3 weeks, so they can actually be exposed to what an engineer does, or what a sales engineer does throughout the day, what a technician does throughout the day, so they can actually work with us. And in that process, we also introduce them through new technologies. However, this has largely been coming from private schools. I mean, I look forward where Dr. Simelane can actually invite us and say, we want to work with you, and say, let's
David,
now...
why do you need to be invited? Why aren't you inviting yourself?
Let me explain.
Why aren't you taking yourself to his door?
Let me finish. I'm getting to the right thing. The challenge with public schools, they are closed schools. When those gates close, to get access there, it's a different monster altogether. And it's as if you are selling something to actually get in there, because you then get what you call referred to district or somewhere else. So there must be what you call a kind of a systematic collaboration, that we can work with the public schools and we can actually be able to at least engage and interact with the learners at a much earlier stage, as well as the teachers themselves. I will definitely appreciate those opportunities. I mean, we work with the ESCOM Expo as well, where we actually engage. I mean, just recently with the science expos, whether in Gauteng you have the Saibono, where we work with Saibono, we even donated a lab there, so that the students can engage in mechatronics and stuff like that. So there are things that we are doing, but I'm more looking into probably a much wider scope where we can collaborate with the department and we can have a greater impact for that.
All right, Heather.
From a modern and an Autodesk perspective, we have identified the gap between technology and industry, and we are starting internship programs for postgrad students. So we are bringing them in and shadowing them with clients, looking for employment and employing people. And yeah, so we've really identified that that gap's got to be filled. We're starting these internship programs. We work with schools all the time. We do Autodesk software for education is free. So, and I really just want to encourage anybody listening today to embrace that. The technology is there. It's free. Use it. We're here to help you implement it, and yeah, let's work together.
The next question is going to be where. It's there where? And who knows that it's there?
It's there. Go onto the Autodesk website, click on education and register. You've got to be with a registered institution, but there's beautiful student communities all over the world where students are collaborating on technology. It's there. Otherwise, just call me
I think
contact
it will
me.
be so important.
I'll help
Maybe
you.
somebody can put it in the chat box. Let's put some of this information in the chat box, because I know that there will be a lot of teachers who've been asking, by the way, this very question of how do we collaborate with the speakers. So let's post this information there so that the delegates can also be able to see it and follow up. Dr. Similane.
I would say, I think the potential link with industry from a basic education perspective is being made possible through the collaboration between ourselves as Basic Education, Department of Higher Education and Training, as well as Department of Employment and Labor. So these three departments are actually working together to create opportunities for young people to be employed or to be employable. But from a Department of Employment and Labor perspective, I think that department is also in touch with industry. They even identify skills and qualifications that will be relevant for the next 10 years. And we are using that research as basic education in our curriculum design, especially focusing on the vocational and the occupational streams that we are introducing.
Well, it sounds to me that there's a lot of work to get done, but we certainly need a lot more collaboration taking place, because if information is only available in a certain space and another space can't access it, like you're saying, Heather, then bridging this gap is simply not going to happen. And I hope that following a conversation like this, nobody's going to be waiting for anybody else's invite. Please exchange email addresses, take each other's phone numbers, do what you have to do. So that one school that can benefit. And you know, how the department works, the basic education department works is that, yes, there is a lot of red tape and process behind it. But if you have Dr. Similane's number, I'm sure it's going to be a lot easier. There won't be any more district officers that are making your life difficult, asking for at least a liver and a kidney, just so that you can meet with the school principal. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you all for your contributions to this conversation, and really insightful to hear the work that each of you are doing in your respective industries. Well, for me, part of the value of this conference is in the open opportunities for technical subject teachers and, of course, other educators across the country to share some of their best practices. It also creates an accessible network of experts in various trades, which the teachers would not have been able to get exposure to. And we're very happy that we can share that knowledge. And we do acknowledge the Kagiso Trust and Sasol Foundation for their support of this initiative. As we were saying earlier, some of this information will be posted in the chat group so that you're also able to go directly to the websites that have been spoken about. It's been an exciting day so far. And it's about to even get better because I have more prizes to give away. So don't go anywhere. I'll be back with you as we move on to our next world. Do stay with us.